Thanks for giving us an opportunity at iCertify for helping you towards your certification needs. This free webinar is on an overview on Agile Methodologies, which is sponsored by iCertify Training, New York. The session is going to be in a presenter mode, so it's going to be a one-way communication. What I highly recommend is for everyone to use the chat option on the top to communicate any queries. And also we have a Q&A session at the end for us to get to know your needs and how we can help you better. With that, I'll get started. Thanks again. So today's session is going to be covering on the Agile Manifesto, the family of methodologies under the Agile umbrella, a small chapter quiz, the Lean, Kanban, development. As we go into the details of each of the Agile methodologies, it's going to be covering the Lean Kanban, extreme programming, crystal methods, feature-driven development, test-driven development, which is an oxymoron we'll talk about later, the Scrum, the most famous of the Agile methodologies, and finally, about the Agile certification option offered by iCertify and any Q&As. So, a bit of the background. iCertify is a New York-based professional certification training provider for Agile, Six Sigma, ITIL, and PMP. They have been providing training materials which have trained almost 3,000 plus members on a monthly basis. They also offer classroom, online, and webinars for professionals, business, and even the government. A few of the certifications offered are the Agile from Scrum Study, PMI's PMP, Axelos ITIL, VMEDU's Six Sigma. About myself, I have around 9 years of experience, and my certifications include the PMP, ACP, the Scrum Studies, Scrum Master, the CSM from Scrum Alliance, ITIL from Exen, and the accredited trainer. As a background, I'm also an Agile coach and a certified Scrum Master. So let's look at the need for Agile. The need of Agile started because of the debacles faced by what we earlier had as the NASA's phased gate approach, or what we currently even more commonly know as the waterfall model. The waterfall model did not deliver on time. It almost never did. It always costed more than what the budget was. Almost 80%, which is a recorded fact, of the projects were failed. That's essentially led to around 1990s, the late 1990s, where there were a lot of methodologies being put forward to enable the successful development. And this was not only across the software world, but across other sectors as well. This led to what is called as the Agile Manifesto, late 2001, where few of the key individuals met over in a ski resort at Utah. Don't ask me why Utah, but that's where they did. And they put across 12 key principles. Before we go much deeper into the 12 key principles, I'd like to talk more about the values that was espoused by the Agile Manifesto. The key values were individuals and interactions over any process or tools. They valued people and their communication and the interactions more than any tool that is being used or the process. Workflows or tools do not matter unless the people use them the right way. They valued working product, a delivered shippable product, over comprehensive documentation. They valued customer collaboration, working together with the customer, than thinking about contract negotiation. They valued responding to change rather than following a plan. The whole disclaimer about the Agile Manifesto is that while there are values, there is value in the items on the right, increasingly from a delivery perspective, from giving a solid ROI for the software development investment being made, the items on the left actually were being relegated to the background. And Agile wanted to correct this. This did not happen at a snap of finger. The Agile methodologies and processes have been under constant growth from the late 1990s. One of the recent developments which have been taking up across most of the organizations is something called as a SAFE, as a Scale Agile framework. But even before, starting from the 1980s, 88, we have been having various Agile methodologies being implemented, being tested, and being perfected. Recently, Scrum, master or the creators Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland celebrated 20 years of when they had documented their methodology. This is to kind of infuse that Agile as a software methodology is pretty recent. It's only 20 years old compared to the 100 or the 200-year-long industrial revolution and others. These are still the beginnings of the software revolution. With that, I'd like to move into the various methodologies or frameworks on Agile. While most of these methodologies or frameworks, as they are also referred to, differ in specific aspects, their adherence or their commonality lies in how they match or espouse the Agile values which we talked about in the earlier chapter. It starts from the Crystal family, so-called because there are multiple methodologies under the Crystal approach, way back in 1980s. Later on to Scrum, which celebrated the 20th year in 2015, DSDM, Dynamic Systems Development Methodology, Extreme Programming, Feature-Driven Development, Adaptive Software Development, so on and so forth, till the latest, which we just talked about, was SAFE, or the Scaled Agile Framework. So let's look, go a little deep under the covers of each of these methodologies and what they talk about. This is going to be just a very high level. We are going to go a couple of steps deeper into each of the methodologies later in the presentation. First, Crystal. Crystal, which had its origins in 1988 by Alistair Cockburn, focuses on people, not on the processes or artifacts. The key characteristics include frequent delivery of usable code, reflective improvement, and osmotic communication. This is a communication methodology which acts unlike the Chinese whispers. They talk about how information can be absorbed subliminally in the background rather than by a forced communicative language. Scrum, started way back in 1995, has the key characteristics of being empirical driven, which essentially means that it adapts to change rather than follows a plan, self-organizing, value-based prioritization, time boxing, and iterative development. DSDM, or the Dynamic Systems Development Methodology, talks about an iterative and incremental approach. And the key characteristics is the Moscow prioritization of scope. Moscow is short for must have, should have, could have, and would have. And these are used to prioritize the various features or the scope items before any development begins. The other parties under the Agile umbrella include Extreme Programming, started in 1996, which is pretty focused, and over the last 5 years has been has been finding its favorite in companies like Google, Amazon, and others, which has the basic principles of having uh, four hands instead of two, wherein two programmers work side by side, working, reviewing, testing, and shipping a product. It The key characteristics or the environmental approach is that it needs to have a flat management structure, and it will have frequent communications with the customer and among other programmers as well. The next include feature-driven development, which essentially talks about five basic activities. First, you develop the overall model, build a feature list, plan by the feature, design by the feature, and build by the feature. The last two are a recursive loop, which enables continuous progress of the activity. The other methodology which I would like to talk a little bit more is the adaptive software development, which talks about a repeating series of speculate, collaborate, and learn cycles. Again, very similar to Scrum, it's going to be mission focused, feature based, iterative, time boxed, risk driven, and change tolerant. With a very high level overview, and there are multiple other methodologies and frameworks which are the sisters or siblings of what we discussed about. But just to give you a flavor of the various methodologies, these are definitely one of the ones that have been taking the industry by storm. So let's start with a quick quiz on what we have learned. The question is, which agile methodologies key characteristic is osmotic communication? The options Scrum, DSDM, Crystal, and FTD. I would highly recommend the participants to use the chat option to provide their answer before I can go for a dramatic reveal. The way to use the chat option would be to use the task bar of the Join Me, which has a quick chat option. Wonderful. I did get one correct response. Congratulations, Chakravarti. The right answer is Crystal. And what does osmotic communication mean? Just to add on, osmotic communication talks about an information flow which flows into the background hearing of members of the team so that they pick up only the relevant information as required, as if through osmosis. This is normally accomplished by seating them in the same room, but that's not a mandatory requirement. Thanks for the responses. So now we are going to move on to cover a little bit more details about each of the agile methodologies. The first one that we want to cover is the lean Kanban development. So let's look at each of these words separately. What is lean? What is Kanban? Lean is based on the Toyota production system, whose basic core principle was to produce results by reducing waste. What is Kanban? Kanban is a Japanese term which literally means a signboard. Think of the Times Square billboards, which is implemented by using visual aids to assist and track the production. Of course, lean has its core origins in the manufacturing organizations, but they have been very effectively introduced into the software development. So what happens when you combine both lean and Kanban is you get the lean Kanban method of software development, which integrates the use of visualization along with the principles of lean, creating a visual incremental evolutionary process management system. Next, we go on to talk a little bit in detail about extreme programming. Extreme programming, as I mentioned earlier, begins with the pair programming, and few of the key other characteristics of extreme programming, or XP for short, include incremental development, flexibility in scheduling of shippable products, automated test codes, verbal communications rather than written or via email, ever evolving design, which XP takes for granted. There is no mandate in the XP that any requirements given by the customer is complete or is accurate, which fortunately or unfortunately is not a great uh, place for developers or others who derive satisfaction from having a stable requirements. But that is the key difference between XP and most of the other agile methodologies, is that it does not take requirements as the final baseline. Um, the other key aspects that I talked about was pair programming, where instead of two, you will have four hands working on the program, on the development, the other helping in review or in testing the code. The other different key roles in XP include the customer, developer, there is a tracker, and a coach. Moving on, we go on to what is most often misunderstood and not implemented right, because primarily because of the variety that it offers, is the crystal methods. Crystal methods was created by Alistair Cockburn. It has, to its own credit, 14 different practices, 10 roles, and 25 products, which again needs to be suitably adopted to each and every project. So what is a crystal, right? Why is it called crystal, and what are the colors in the crystal actually talking about? As I earlier mentioned, there are 25 different products, essentially 25 different variants of crystal methods, and they are given a color spectrum, right, to determine which variant will ideally suit for implementing in a right project. There are multiple factors which are used. Few of the key factors include comfort, discretionary money, and life play a very vital role in determining the color of the project. The color again determines or is codified as what they call as a crystal clear, crystal yellow, crystal orange web, crystal red, maroon, diamond, sapphire, and many more. With that, I shall move on to DSDM and primarily talk about one of the key characteristics of DSDM, which is the Moscow principle. Moscow, as earlier mentioned, is a framework to enable prioritization of the scope. This is a generic principle and is not adhered or is not implemented, is not invented by the DSDM, but has been adopted by DSDM. Essentially, 75% of the requirements under the Moscow principle has to be characterized under the must need. 20% would be important, but maybe worked around short-term goals, will be under the should have. And the other, which can be left out in case push comes to shove, is the could have. And the last one, which will be the won't, is kind of the backlog, which may be taken currently out of scope or would be taken up during the next iteration. After DSDM, we move on to FDD, feature-driven development. There are five key methodologies or activities, which starts with developing the model, building the feature list, planning by the feature, and then as each iteration goes, you design and build by the feature and send across a shippable product. This was designed by Jeff DeLuca in 1997 and operates on designing and building by features. The other similar terminology, the TDD, is a totally different approach, which is the test-driven approach, which involves writing automated test code first. Pretty oxymoron. And developing the least amount of code to kind of pass it. So the recursive pattern for a TDD involves writing a test case that fails, and then writing a code that works till it succeeds, and then you repeat the cycle. Moving along, we come to the final key methodology, which is the most famous in the various agile family, the Scrum. Scrum is one of the agile frameworks for project management. It employs an adaptive and iterative approach. It was formulated as a faster, more flexible ways to deliver the greatest value in the least amount of time. One of the biggest claims for Scrum is that it delivers 80% of the value in 20% of the budget or 20% of the time, whichever you want to consider. The key characteristics, as I mentioned earlier, is that it uses empirical control. It goes in, that is a sprint that is essentially anywhere between 1 to 6 weeks of timeline within which the developers have to deliver a specified number of features, which essentially are potentially shippable. And that's a key term which differentiates Scrum from most of the other methodologies. With that, we come to the last chapter quiz. The question is, all of the following are part of the Scrum principles, except, is it A, the Scrum members are self-organizing, B, they are time-boxed, C, it has a defined process control, or D, it has a value-based prioritization methodology? I'm going to wait a few minutes for answers. Yes. The answer, once again, all marks to Chakravarti. The answer is C. Scrum uses empirical process control rather than a defined process control, and that essentially defines that instead of adhering to a plan that was set years back, Scrum talks about adapting to change and moving forward. With that, we come to an end of this session. What I would like to use the next 5 minutes is to talk about where is Agile in this current industry, why or how can you get certified, and how can you show your presence in this Agile industry as well. So first, why Agile certification is needed? As per the Gartner report, 80% of all software projects are Scrum based. 86.9% of Agile projects have observed increased profits. And the salary report from Indeed report that the Agile Scrum project managers earn 23% higher. In fact, a certified Scrum Master, according to pay scale, has a median salary of $120,000 on an annual basis. Agile is not it's not restricted to governments or software, but it has been implemented across BBC, Google, Intel, GE, the FBI Sentinel project, which came back on the aftermath of 9/11, used Agile, Adobe, Netflix, and even Yahoo. So the next question, now that I've impressed on the relevance of Agile, is what are the Agile certifications? How can I certify myself as Agile? The typical hierarchy, if I might say, on Agile certifications start with the Scrum Master, which goes on, which is the basic entry-level certification offered. This guides, facilitates, and teaches Scrum practices that usually the Scrum Masters or the project managers or the leads would have to be certified within whenever they are getting into a Scrum project. And they implement As you move further after the Scrum Master, you can definitely get yourself as an Agile Certified SAMC, which helps you work across other Kanban or Lean projects as well. You can also get certified as the SPOC, which is the Product Owner Certification. And finally, a conglomeration of these, either of these two certifications would help you get yourself certified as an expert Scrum Master. So, what is the format of the SMC, or the First Initial Foundation exam? It is a multiple choice question with 100 questions to be answered in 120 minutes. It is also a proctored online exam. That essentially means that you would be able to take this exam any place, anytime, at your convenience. And then the next question is, if you are interested, how do I take or get myself SMC certified? iCertify offers you both a classroom session, which is a 2-day classroom session, which costs around $1,250 to get certified, or the other even more viable option for people is to prescribe to our online self-paced training and certification course, which currently is priced around $450. Let me show you what this entails in a quick live demo. Once you get access to the training materials, you would be able to access various chapters using a each of these chapters would have great videos that you can watch and attend by in your own free time. The audio will be a little lower. Let me increase it. There are around 16 hours of videos, contents. What the training and the certification also gives you is that if you are interested in taking the PMP certification, this also provides you around 16 PMI PDUs for you to use for your PMP certification. As I mentioned, each of the chapters will have their own self-paced online quizzes. And finally, you come to your exam, which you can schedule yourself and take it at your own pace or time. So that covers today's session. I'd like to use this time. Thanks again for giving us an opportunity to help you towards your certification needs. I would like to use this time to understand if there are any specific questions and any support that you would need from us. You can use the chat option on the top to respond back on how you want us to take it forward.